Welcome, this is the Drupal usability meeting for January 6th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and also present are Jess or XJM sharing their screen, Abby Elliott, Kin Pham, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Ralph Kohler. So go ahead, Jess.
Thank you, Benji. The issue ID for this is 54798. Yes, that is only 5 digits long. This is a feature request from 2006 that hit the RTBC queue the other day that I had some concerns with the usability of. So basically, what this feature, the feature request is to add a button to the core user interface to clear the whole statistics module history. So basically, the use case for this, I think, is if you're using the statistics module, you're developing a site, you set up a bunch of content, you test it a bunch, and you get a bunch of statistics in your database for how much the content has been viewed. And then when you go to deploy, there's no easy way for a site administrator to reset those statistics back for production use, essentially. So the proposal is to add just basically I've got the statistics page here. So this is with the patch applied. Without the patch, the only difference is that this field set right here for reset site statistics isn't present. So what the patch does is it adds a field set to the statistics administration page with this reset button. And right now, this is my first concern with the patch. So it says reset statistics, no description, there's just a button. I click this button, and in the current implementation, there is no confirmation form. So I just clicked that button and it just deleted, it truncated an entire database table, basically. So my first thought was that there probably should be a confirmation form. And then if everyone agrees that yes, there should be a confirmation form before you delete an entire database table of data, then the second question is, does the way that it's presented with this separate field set currently make sense? Or do we have any suggestions from anyone from a better user interface for it?
I also wonder whether it's expected that when the page reloads that the field set is open.
Let's see that.
And any opinions on the primary question? Should there be a confirmation form? Quinn and Ralph, you're muted. Ralph gives a +1 in the comments or in the chat. I also agree that there should be a confirmation form.
Same.
So was that Abby saying same? Okay, I would call that a consensus.
Yeah, pretty clearly. And so yeah, then the second part of it is, so I actually just tested, and it looks like the field set is actually open by default. It was only collapsed because I collapsed it when I was toggling it on the page load. So okay. that was me and not the browser. So yeah, the second, so the second part is does it belong in a separate field set? I don't even know why this has a field set to begin with, actually, because it was the only thing on the entire form. But that's what it is right now, is that if you if I crop my browser, this is what you would see currently when you went to configuration system statistics, is you'd see that's actually another problem that I just noticed now, is that this button to reset the site statistics is available even if you haven't enabled statistics at all. So when I spun up this test site, I did not do the steps that I did yesterday when I'm testing this. Yesterday when I was testing this, I created several pieces of sample content. I checked this box, I saved the configuration, and then placed the top most popular content block on my page and visited the pieces of content a bunch from like different browsers and stuff. Then, you know, watch that change when I cleared the cache. Today, I noticed that there's a button to reset the statistics before it's even enabled. And that also, this is kind of weird, like this. So as an end user, so this reset button resets the statistics, but there's a save configuration button down here that I didn't click. And so it looks like this reset is part of the form. And that seems suboptimal to me because as a user, I wouldn't necessarily understand that I didn't have to click that this save configuration button didn't apply to the contents of this field set. But I don't have a better idea as to how that should be presented. So I was wondering if anyone else did. Like what should it look like instead, I guess is the question.
There are a lot of questions there. Where shall we start? I think probably we should start with that last question, form structure. It is, I think, confusing to have a form with a submit button at the bottom, save configurations, standard, and also have a button that causes an immediate action. We've talked about that sort of thing on, I think, the appearance page at previous meetings, that it's kind of confusing that there's a variety of immediate actions you can do as well as a form button you can click at the bottom. But let's get off this page. I didn't mean to get too distracted. But that is the sort of thing we've talked about before. So what would be a less confusing form structure? Any ideas?
I guess one easy option would be to move it into a completely separate vertical tab, so it's not on the same page at all. But then that has the problem of like, is that too many clicks deep to get to the action?
And you already pointed out that it's kind of odd to have a single item in a collapsible field set to begin with. And having another page with the same structure is sort of making it worse. Go ahead, Ralph.
I think from my point of view, I wouldn't worry that much that it would be too much clicks in that case, because resetting the site statistics, you don't do that often. So I think it wouldn't be that much of a problem. And at the same time, it would be clearer to have a separation of concerns. As Benji mentioned, the point mixing immediate actions with something you need to confirm first and save the configuration, like in the case of the checkbox. So tabs might work from my point of view. But then again, you have a single item on the first tab and a single item on the second tab, so tricky.
Yeah, a couple of alternatives. I don't know that I love either one, but one would be to turn it into a checkbox so that when you save the configuration, it resets. And the other would be to have a second submit button. So rather than a second section in the form, have save configuration and then right next to it, reset statistics.
Like a red button. Do we have an example of that somewhere else? Like the closest thing that I can think of that's similar is the clear all caches thing, which is actually, this is the same thing. The only difference is that this field set is the first one on the page. And then there's still a save configuration button down here. So this is the same bad pattern on the performance page. Like clear all caches when I click this, and that also happens instantly. The difference is that that's cache data, which can be regenerated. It's not statistic data that is permanently lost. So maybe they were following that pattern, but it's not really an applicable pattern. It's more like what's an example? Like reverting a revision or something.
Okay. Oh, and Offer has just joined us. Welcome.
I also wonder if there should be help text. I know that in general, like more help text isn't necessarily always better because people don't read it, but I have no idea what this means if I've just installed the statistics module for the first time. And there's no, like if I look at the help page for statistics, obviously this patch is also not adding, that's another point that's missing, is this, that there should at least be help text about it in the help topic and in the hook help for the module. Like there should be a uses resetting statistics and a paragraph of help text there. But then I think whether this is on this form or on a separate vertical tab or whatever, there should be more than the word reset, potentially, like an explanation of what that means. 2 sentences, like, you know, the Drupal is currently configured to count page views, and something to the effect that it'll start over from 0 when you click this button.
Go ahead, Ralph.
I agree in the regards of the help text. And one other detail, I've taken a look at the patch yesterday quickly, and I've just clicked several times the reset button in a row. Well, you get the admin notice that the statistics are successfully removed, but from my point of view, also in regards of, for example, what Jess mentioned, if the count content views checkbox isn't checked at first and there isn't any statistics created yet, it might be helpful to have some sort of a brief statistic that, for example, what are the effects? Are there already statistics available? And
Yeah.
that you get some sort of feedback. For example, me, I've clicked it several times and the only thing was it was successfully removed, but I have no feedback. But if I would see, get on the page, you see, for example, you have, for example, I don't know in what kind of form the statistics are created, but for example, you have for the last 700 days recorded statistics or something like that. It hasn't to be in detail, just a rough outline, and that you see after pushing the reset aside the admin notice, also you have 0 days, for example, or whatever you want to display in that context. Just a statistical feedback for the user, maybe.
So maybe on the confirm form, it would say something like, this will delete 300 days worth of statistics on 200,000 nodes or something. Yeah. And then when you click the code form, it would say like a statistics last reset date, maybe.
Yeah, that would be good.
Actually, that would be, in some ways, that would almost be maybe sufficient help text by itself. If so we say, if this is on a separate vertical tab, if we just said statistics last reset, and it would say right now, never, or whatever the first record is in the statistics table.
I agree.
Yeah, Quinn gives a +1 for help text. And I was also thinking that before you press the button, so when the page loads, it could have some information. I was thinking of just the row count, but you're right that the earliest thing you're deleting would also be something, and then and then the confirmation message could say so many rows deleted. Yeah, and Quinn says before and after the user presses the reset button. I think that's agreeing with with what I'm saying, or maybe clarifying it. Yeah, some text would be useful. So I guess as Jess points out, we already have this pattern of immediate actions mixed up with configuration forms. So maybe it's okay to follow the same pattern. We've talked about the interface text. So you want to know before you click the button and after you button with confirmation, more detail about what's going to happen. Oh yeah, one other point I wanted to make is that you can't really rely on whether currently statistics are enabled. Like maybe we've been collecting statistics for a year and then we decided that it was too much of a load on the database. So we unchecked that button a week ago and we come back to the form today. There will still be data that we can clear, even though the count content views button is not selected. So
yeah, it shouldn't be toggled by this field. It should maybe be toggled based on whether there's any records in the database. Like if there's nothing to reset, you should like, I don't know if it makes sense to show the user that action, but that's a reason not for it to be hidden or not based on this, because like you actually highlighted what is probably the main reason to reset the statistics, which is that to drop a gigantic database table that you don't actually need.
Right, and if we add a count query and say there are 200,000 rows in the table, and give that as part of the help text, well, if it turns out there are 0 rows, then we can just disable the reset button because it won't do anything.
Yeah, or done not display it at all, since disabled buttons are bad UX.
That's right. That's right.
Another thing I noticed when testing it last night that Ralph's comment made me think of, I'm just going to say this now for the recording since I forgot to make note of it in my review. I also noticed that when manually testing that it doesn't trigger a cache clear. Like it just, like, I mean, this is a very, you can tell if this dates back to 2006. This is code-wise, this is a very non-modern pattern that it just uses the database connection to truncate the data directly. There's no there's no data model interaction, right? There's no controller. There's no, these aren't entity records. It's just, but also it doesn't trigger a cache clear. So you click the button and then your most recent content block still shows, the popular content still shows the top 10 pieces of things that you hit the most during your development testing. And it's not until some separate thing invalidates the cache for that block. So that's just a bug with the patch, I think, is that it needs cache invalidation.
Okay, that's a little out of scope for the usability.
Yeah. I just but it is a usability problem, right? Because when I was testing it, and this is what I thought Ralph was going to say at first, is like when I clicked the button, it didn't seem to be doing anything, right? Mm-hmm. And it was only that I was like, oh, this I need to invalidate the block cache. But the reason that I knew that I needed to invalidate the block cache is because I'm a Drupal developer, not because my Drupal site told me that was a necessary step to see the impact of resetting the statistics. Anyway, it's a lot of things for one button. I think that from my perspective, that gives us I guess from the unresolved question of whether where it should be, right? Like, can anyone think of any other similar patterns in the user interface where we do a deletion operation? Like when you, I mean, the only thing I can think of is resetting an entity revision, but that's not like deleting all the revisions. That's just reverting one, and you still get a confirm form for it. Is there anything else? I guess like a views bulk operation would be.
Actually, revisions add a new revision. It doesn't delete anything.
Right. So let's see if I have
Bulk operations.
and then so on this page, come on. Uh-oh, I have to kick the tires on my quick start command here. Here, no. All right, so yeah, so if I were to delete content, so the pattern here is that I select delete content, I click apply to selected items, and then I get the confirm form.
You're reminding me that we have this old issue that delete content should not be the default there, but
Yeah,
again,
that's,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't try to distract you. And that's a confirmation form, or at least by default. I guess maybe you can turn off the confirmation step.
yeah, so this is different in that, I mean, this is another multi-purpose form, but at least on this form, all of the bulk operations are bulk operations of content. There's not like this isn't me enabling like the creation of article nodes on the same page. So I think I'm maybe personally leaning toward just for simplicity's sake, suggesting they put it in a separate vertical tab. And like, I mean, like, you know, reset statistics as a vertical tab title would be sort of self-explanatory.
Rather than a field set
Yeah.
on the same page. Go ahead, Ralph.
But I've noticed, but there might be one problem if we would go with a second tab, because there was this thought of hiding the reset button in case no statistics are assessed yet and the count content views checkbox is disabled. Then it would be then the whole tab would have to be hidden. Otherwise, the page for the tab would be empty. That would be also a problem.
Right.
So that would be confusing as well for the user.
But for the, you mean for the tab? Well, yeah, definitely. We definitely don't want an empty vertical tab. I guess the question is whether the vertical tab should be, whether we do want the vertical tab to conditionally be shown or not, which also, I guess I thought of another place, which is Layout Builder. When you enable Layout Builder, although this maybe isn't a good example either. So you go to your, let's see, I think I have to go to the Manage Display, and then I have to check this button. And then, actually, I can't remember how to reset them. Oh, what's this? There's a little, whoa, is that new?
That's Claro.
Cool.
Maybe if you put
Has,
your toolbar in horizontal mode, you'll have enough screen real estate that you get the usual tabs.
Sorry, what usual tabs?
So yeah, sometimes gets confused, but anyway, yeah, it's been like that for a while in Claro.
Does anyone remember where you reset all the overrides? I know there's an option somewhere. I mean, I guess if I would uncheck this and click save, well, no, I don't have any data, so.
I think you have to, oops, if you go back to the page before, and if you check both checkboxes, and then make a change on a node for a particular node, and then you're able to reset it afterwards. If I remember correctly, we had an issue a few weeks ago about that.
No, I don't want to take up too much time. I think that maybe we can give the issue the amount of direction that we have so far. And then I'll look into that after the call, because we've taken up half the meeting, so I don't want to take up too much more time on it. And my site has also died again.
That's okay. Two issues is pretty common for one of these meetings. And Ken suggests that moving the reset button to the top of the form as for consistency with what was it, the appearance page?
That's the cache page, actually. The performance reset cache is that's the words at the top is this page here. But the difference with that, though, is that this is not a destructive operation. I mean, if your site is under heavy load, it might cause you problems, but it's a temporary problem, not a permanent data loss problem. So we shouldn't necessarily be using the same pattern for a permanently destructive operation as the caches.
Although I think structure-wise that makes it a separate form on the same page, which maybe it already is. But for the statistics, it looks like it's part of the same form, which increases the confusion I talked about at the start, that it's an immediate action rather than selecting a checkbox and then submitting the form. So I think that having it as a separate form and perhaps putting it at the top rather than the bottom, as Quinn suggested, would be more consistent with this page.
Yeah, that's true. It's also similar to the action buttons that we have at the top of pages here, like the add whatever action buttons. Those are also at the top, so that they appear visually distinct and separate from the bulk area of the form at the bottom.
And that might be a good pattern to follow. Why not make it an action button that goes to a separate page? I guess an action button is actually just a link. It's not a button that triggers a confirmation form.
It's not a real form, but the bad appearance page again. Yeah, okay, there's nothing useful. He has a pattern here.
Yeah, so I guess we haven't really come up with a good answer to the right form structure to use to be less confusing, but we do have some solid recommendations for help text and confirmation that would improve it, and you also from your manual testing have some other suggestions to make. So so Jess, can we count on you to leave a comment on the issue?
Yeah, I think me and or some of my colleagues collaboratively will write up a comment.
Okay, well, thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Ralph, do you want to share your screen? Talk about the issue you were thinking of?
Okay, 1 second. Okay, it's issue number 318264. I'll paste the link in the chat. It's issue title possible misleading use of the checkmark icon on link buttons. It's an issue I've worked on during Drupal Camp New York City 2020, and which got revisited during Prague this year. And it's basically about, if you take a look here on the appearance page, the icons on the immediate actions like install set as default are all the check mark buttons, while at the same time the, for example, add new theme is with a plus button. So the issue is basically about changing the icon for the install from the check mark to a simple plus, like it is on the add button. Because at the moment, in the old state, the cognitive load, for example, I tend to avoid reading, and the cognitive load, the visual pressure for reading, and I make just a glimpse. And if you have just check mark, I have to read. So in that case, install and set as default. So it's cumbersome. That is one detail. And on the other hand, Elizabeth Dunn, who was also in the call, added WCAG 324 consistent identification in regards of the plus button used here and the check mark, which is not in line with that. And she also added an example in comment number 11 in regards of the cognitive load, and provided a few links for WebAIM and W3C. And during Drupal Camp Europe in Prague, there was also the suggestion to change also the icon for the install and set as default, because there isn't any yet. My thought was basically, and which was also done, to create a follow-up issue for that. I copy the link into the chat. That's that issue. And to keep the scope of the issue to just the install button and changing the icon. And yeah, a few yesterday or a few days before, it was picked up, the issue, by the new initiative by Smusgrave, and yeah, Jess added the needs usability review yesterday as well, the tag. So I thought I wanted to bring it up. And also, as Benji mentioned, the appearance page in general, there is also the meta issue, and I think it might be suitable to edit there as a child as well.
Right. Thanks for pasting in the links. For the sake of the recording, the meta issue is 2860419. Yeah, I guess my initial reaction, I haven't looked at this issue before, but just my first reaction is that a check mark conveys exactly the opposite message. I think of that as a status indicator,
Yeah.
appropriate for something that's already installed. rather than an action to install it. So I think that using a plus sign as your first suggestion was to make it consistent with the action link at the top of the page, I think that would be an improvement.
In terms of whether the set as default indicator can be scoped to a follow-up or not, I guess the key question is, does it make it worse if we don't handle that in the same issue? I don't think it makes it worse. I agree with Benji that the check for install is very confusing, because that would make me think that I had just installed it, right? We have like a check mark presentationally when we install themes. So that would be, or like install anything in the status message at the top, right? So I don't think it makes it worse. And I guess but if we did want to handle it in the same issue, I guess the question is like, what is, so the set as default has a check mark already in the same screen that's being shared right now. So is installing and setting it as default more like installing it, or more like setting it as the default? And I think it's more like setting it as default. So I think that if core was in a state where in 10.1 we change the plus sign for the install link, but not the set as default link, I think that's fine.
Why not change both of them at the same time? They're both actions rather than status indicators. So I think both of them should be pluses rather than checks.
But the setting as something as default is a Boolean state. It's not, you can't add n of them. Like you can add one to, you can keep adding themes, but you don't toggle whether something's the default. You do toggle whether something's the default or not. You can't do it. You know, you can't have a bunch of defaults. Can't keep adding them. Like it would plus set as default. I don't know, maybe it would make more sense than the check.
Yeah, in the test site I have running, I just installed 7 because it's no longer in core. So I downloaded 7 and made that the admin theme, and there are no icons, there are just the links. And they are more clearly links. In Claro, it's a little unclear.
Yeah, the like gray fonts and the small size does not look action-like. So are you saying that it's kind of a regression over 7 in that way?
I'm not sure I would go so far as to call it a regression, but I do think that 7 is clearer, that these are clickable. I suppose when you hover on them, you get some hover text and font color changes. But I guess one thing I've learned from attending some of Amy June's accessibility presentations at various Drupal camps is that you should underline your links. And in Claro, they're not underlined.
Well, especially when theming guide is underlined, it should either be underlined or a button, right? Like, or presentationally speaking, it should look like something you can interact with, and it doesn't.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Do we want to suggest going further on this issue, and instead of just changing the icon, style them as buttons?
That would seem to be in scope to me. I mean, although then that would mean 3 buttons in a row, settings uninstall and set as default on the installed themes in the top half of the screen share currently. Which is, I think, it's like we don't ever want to have more than 2 buttons together.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware
Do
of
we?
that.
I mean, I think there are a few places that we have 3, but there was an effort before 8.0 to reduce that to only have 1 primary action plus 1 like cancel action in a row in a lot of places. I guess we would probably need, we would need someone to at least to make a mock-up of it to give feedback.
So maybe that's controversial enough that it would delay this issue, and we can consider that as a follow-up.
Yeah.
And go ahead and just change the icon as part of this issue.
Yeah.
And Quinn says in the chat, icons for indication versus icons for action, smiley face, agree on just change the icon.
But in regards of the set as default and install and set as default issue, it overlaps or goes into also one of the child issues of the appearance meta. It's issue number 3249379 with a suggestion to somehow either remove the field set for administration theme and make the selection of the administration theme similar to the front-end theme, that you're able to set it there as well. That would be one option, or the other way around. That would probably solve the issue with the set as default. Yeah, set the front-end theme also in a select list, like the administration theme. That would be also an option, maybe.
Right, and this is sort of the point that I was bringing up earlier, that
Yep.
That the appearance page has this confusing structure as a form where it combines immediate actions with a submit
Exactly.
button at the bottom. Yeah. Okay, so let's focus on the issue we started with, and I think we have a consensus that the check mark should be replaced with a plus, that we should not try to expand the scope. I think we can move it to be a child issue of that meta issue for improving the appearance page, and we should have follow-up issue to consider changing them from links to buttons, or perhaps underlining them. And I guess before making any recommendations along those lines, we should have a look at the history and see why it was styled the way it currently is. They do have this action class, CSS class. I'm sorry, action link CSS class. So presumably some thought has gone into that already. I'd like to review the history of that before suggesting that we change it. So Ralph, do you think that's enough direction for this issue?
I think yes. So basically, the issue is ready to go, and we have just to leave a comment in regards of the follow-up steps, from my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see clear before and after pictures under user interface changes. So the usual work on the issue summary to make it easier to review would help. And I think that Quiet One mentioned that in the second most recent comment, basically saying it needs work for issue summary updates. Okay, so Ralph, will you update that issue?
Yep.
Okay. We have less than 10 minutes left. Anything anyone would like to bring up that'll not take too long? Guess I can give a little update on issue we've been following. If I can just find the right window. And this is something the usability team has been working on for a while. I just have to find the right window to share. Here we go. So I hope I'm sharing move custom block library to content. It's issue 286-2564. And it's part of the overall restructuring of the block admin pages. Moving this particular one is for moving the list of custom blocks from the structure part of the admin menu to the content part of the admin menu. And also changing the path. And it's that last part going from admin structure block, as you can see in the first screenshot, the before screenshot, to admin content. Or I guess I should really look at these two screenshots. Changing the path is, of course, disruptive. That's why I initially added the tag for product manager review to these issues. But I guess it's been tagged with release manager review now. So the question now is what to do about that, whether to do that on the current issue. We've already made the change that the what is it? What used to be a child page of this was the custom block types has already been moved to the structure menu, and its path has been changed. So what anyway, we have some work to do on this issue, and I don't want to try to hash it out in the 5 minutes we have left. I just wanted to bring it up as continued progress on this issue. And something we'll have to decide.
So I think I worked the second issue last week for some things, or by last week it might mean this week.
Right, the second issue being the one that I'm currently looking at. And what we have at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
With merge requests, you can never reliably get to the bottom of the page.
Okay, yeah.
So I think 119 was your comment. Now I'm the one who actually changed the status to needs work.
Oh yeah, because I was commenting on the MR.
Yeah, we're still getting used to merge requests, aren't we? Okay, so it's nearly the end of the hour. As I said, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, just brief updates. So I think we can end the meeting now unless someone has something else they'd like to bring up. Thank you all for coming. Oops.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, and is there something in the chat that just thanks to Ralph. Oh, Ralph, what's this link you put into Figma?
It's the Figma link of the Drupal design system.
Okay, thank you. And I wasn't doing a good job of following the chat while I was sharing my screen because that's kind of hard in Zoom. Great. Then I'll be here again next week. Hope some of you can join me again.
Thank you, and a nice weekend to everyone.
And Happy New Year.
And
Me
happy-
all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye all.